Now that we've seen our end goal and we've seen the structural side, let's have a look at the code that's going to make all of this work together.
So we're going to be looking at this as if you've never heard of particle, you've never heard of a photon, starting from ground zero. So the first thing I'd like to call out is that Particle has some really awesome documentation that you can find at docs.particle.io. When you get into the docs, you'll notice the different devices, and we are using the photon here. So I'm on the quick start, connect your photon for obviously the photon. All of these different devices have different feature sets and benefits, and the photon is probably the most basic. So I'm calling this out because you're going to need to get your device connected to the internet, which is really simple to do. And then once you get it connected to the internet, then you're able to flash code to it. Now, I'm just dragging over my mobile phone because once you get your device connected, you can easily access the Particle app, which I've done here. And you can see that I have several devices, and you'll notice that the top one, the FP 2019 clown is kind of pulsating here, and that blue is letting me know that this device is connected. So if we click into the device, you're able to see functions that exist. So for example, I've got this fire clown function. If we had any variables, we could also flash tinker, which is the basic program, to the device. If we click at the bottom, you'll notice where we can come in. We could edit the name if we wanted to. We could ping this and signal the device, which would make the device, the light on the device, it would start turning color so that we know that it is connected and everything's going good. And you get more information about the device. And if you wanted to take some notes, you could do that as well. So really, really helpful, really simple. If we want to add a new device, we would just hit the plus icon and select photon. So once you get it connected to the internet, you're going to use this app likely to do that, and you're going to sync it to a network. And then that is how we get the device online. And then once it's online, we can easily flash code to the device. So over here in the second tab, which is build.particle.io, you'll notice that we have an interface. So we have an IDE, which is a development environment where we can literally write code right here in the browser and then send it to the device. Now, everything we're going to talk through right now is also easily located in the docs as well. So just kind of a quick tour over here on the left hand side, we are looking at the code view. Now if we click code, you'll notice that we have various apps that we have created. Everybody will have these example apps that you can look at. So like if you wanted to know how to blink an LED, you could click and see, and you've got a lot of comments here documented so that you can really understand what's going on. So these apps here are ones I have written, and I believe we were looking at the 2019 clown. So I don't have a ton of comments, and that's why it's pretty succinct. Now over here on the left, again, you can access the settings, the console, devices, docs, help, and libraries. So if you look at the devices, you'll notice again, here are devices that I have, and notice the blue light. That's letting me know that this device is connected, and that is that photon is connected to the internet. And we also have this star. We can target whichever device we would like to receive code or push code to. So we're writing code right now for the clown. So you can see the name of this is FrightProps 2019 for the clown, and we're targeting the clown photon. So whenever we click this flash, which is an OTA, so over the air flash, it means whatever code we write here in the development environment, it's going to push that code to the device. And you literally can see the light turning from blue from being connected to pink when it's uploading and restarting, and then it will go back blue. And that's really how simple it is to get code on these devices. So we also have the verify and the save icon. So if we look at the code, and I'll kind of make this a little bit bigger here, this code is very basic in nature, and this is literally all the code that we are writing in order to make the pneumatic cylinders press or push out on both devices, on Slimer and the Clown. So these devices are using the same exact code. So for example, if we were to toggle right now to Slimer, you'll notice the code is the same. I'm just using D0 instead of D1 on the Clown. So let's talk about this. So we have an int, which is an integer, and what we're doing is we're mapping this D1, which is a pin on the photon on the right side, the digital one. We're saying that that is going to be called the Clown pin. So in our setup, this is where we need to kind of give some instructions to the program. We are setting that Clown pin to be an output. So these pins can be inputs where they would take in data. For example, if they were taking in a temperature or something like that, but they can also be outputs where they would be writing information or sending information. So we use pin mode, and the case is important here. So this is like camel case. If you were to put a capital P, it would be wrong. It would give you an error. So pin mode, Clown pin, which again is that D1, we're saying, hey, this is going to be an output, and then we end the line with a semicolon. Then we do this particle.function. So particle is really awesome in that we have these, what we refer to as cloud functions that we can easily access. And so when we say particle.function, and then I put FireClown in quotes, this is going to dynamically create a web service, a web API endpoint that we can hit. And then when we hit that endpoint, it is in turn going to run some code that is located on the device, which is actually this FireClown func, which is short for FireClown function. And I'll show you how we can access this API endpoint momentarily. But that's all you have to do to get that created. Now, these programs, if you were to create a brand new program, so if you were to go into code and click a new one, you would just have the setup and the loop. You wouldn't have any code. So all programs are going to consist of a setup and a loop. Setup is where you define variables and set your pin modes, create functions, things like that. And then loop is anything that you're going to need to happen continuously on these devices. So these devices are single threaded, so it's just going to do this over and over and over. So you can imagine a scenario where you may need to, check a temperature in a freezer constantly, and if it gets below 70 or 30 or whatever it may be, you want to, take some action. Well, in this case, there's nothing that we need to do over and over and over. We simply want to control a device from a mobile phone or iPad or whatever it may be. So I put in a comment of do nothing here because we don't need to do anything in the loop. Now, I then create this FireClown func, and this is an int because we need to actually return a value. So I will just return a 1, meaning success. So usually you would put this in a if else, and if you have a success, then you return 1, and if not, you would return a -1 or a 0. So that is why it is defined as an integer, if you're wondering about that. Now, all cloud functions except one parameter, which is of type string. So we're not even really sending a parameter, but we do have to accept one. So then we're going to say we want to digital write, which means we're going to send a signal to the Clown pin, and we want to write it to being high. So again, that Clown pin is mapping back to D1. So we're saying when this function is executed, we want to write to that Clown pin, which is D1, we want to turn it high. We want to send a positive signal. Then we're going to delay for 0.02 of a second. And then after that slight delay, we're going to digital write that Clown pin, that D1, back to low. So we're going to turn it on for 0.02 of a second, and then we're going to turn it off. Now, if you'll notice when we go back to the code, so we're currently looking at the Clown. If we look at Slimer, the delay on Slimer is a full second. And that is because I want the clown head to move faster than I want the Slimer coming out of the trash can. And it's not the speed of it going up and down, because we're controlling that by the actual exhaust knobs on the solenoid. This is when it gets to the top, how long do we let it sit there? And so I'm letting Slimer coming out of the trash can sit for a little bit longer than we're allowing the clown. And so that is all the code that we have to do. Now we can click save and then verify. And when we click verify, you'll see it is compiling the code, and it says code verified, great work. So all we have to do now is then click flash, and that will send this code, which I'll go ahead and do it. It will send this code to the actual device. And so that is all we need to do to get the code running on the device. So the next thing we need to do is understand how we can access this API endpoint in order to click a button and make this thing fire. So here in my personal site, I have created 2 buttons, and so we are using HTML and CSS to do this, and we're also going to be using some JavaScript, specifically jQuery in our case, in order to hit the endpoint. So I'm using DNN, which ships with jQuery out of the box. jQuery, yes, it's old, outdated, not cool anymore, but it is very simple and easy to explain and understand, and that's why we're going to use it here. So if you were not using a CMS or some system that already has jQuery as a library, then you could like Google, you could say jQuery CDN, and there'll be a W3 Schools article where you can figure out how to reference jQuery simply by including a script tag in the head of your document. So anyways, really straightforward and simple to do. So I'm going to click into edit mode and just show you that I've got 2 modules here. And again, this is just HTML. And if I toggle into HTML view, you'll notice that I've given this a class of DNN primary action with and a class of button as well with an ID of clown. So this ID is what is going to be important for us. The primary action and button class just gives it that blue styling that we were looking at. So the clown ID is something we want to make note of. And then over here in the second one, we look at the ID of trash can. So we're going to use those IDs to call into those with jQuery and then execute a call, jQuery Ajax, to these endpoints. So I'm going to drag this document over, and you'll notice that I have started a script block and ended a script block. And then I've got 2 functions. One is for fire clown head, and the other is for fire trash can. And then you remember the IDs I just mentioned, the clown and the trash can. So we're using jQuery. That's what these $signs are. So we are essentially grabbing these IDs, and then we're executing on click. We're going to execute a function, which is the fire clown head function, which is right here. And for the trash can, we're going to execute the fire trash can function, which is right here. Now, this is the endpoint that was created. And if you look at these, they are very similar except for this section where it says fire clown and fire trash can. Now, if you remember back, if we go back here into the IDE, notice that we have particle.function fire clown, and then on Slimer, we've got particle.function fire trash can. So these are the cloud functions that we have created. Now, whenever you want to create an endpoint, and I'll just put some space here so we can talk about this, you are going to access https api.particle.io/v1/devices. Now, once you get to this point, this is standard across all of these calls. Then we need to put in our device ID. So notice that these device IDs are similar, but look at the last couple digits. They are different. So we need to get the device ID. So the way to do that is you go into your devices, and again, we're looking at the clown. And if you click the arrow, you'll notice that you get the device ID. So we will copy that, go back into the document and paste. And then you will enter in the name of whatever your cloud function is that you create. So we're going to call this Fire Clown. And then we put a question mark. And then we put the words access _ token. And this is just a format that you have to follow, or a pattern that you have to follow. For all of your calls. So access _ token. So each user inside of Particle has a unique access token, which you can see in the settings. Now, typically you would not expose your personal access token like I'm doing right now to the public, but the good thing is you can easily reset the token. So by the time you see this token, I will have already reset it, and there won't be any issues. But nevertheless, we need to copy that token, and then we will paste the token in. So this is how you construct the URL for the endpoint. Again, the api.particle/io/v1/devices, that's going to be similar across all of them. Then you have your device ID, and then I messed it up. And then you have your function and your access token. So that is how you construct the URL. So what we are doing is and there are probably better ways to do this, but we are creating a request URL. We're just making a variable out of it. And then we're doing a jQuery Ajax post to that request URL. Now, you could pass a parameter, but we don't need to in order for this to function for what we're trying to do, because we don't need to do any logic. We don't have to do it if then, like if the parameter equals something, then take an action. We just want to say whenever this button is clicked, then we want to take action. So I have copied this script block here, and then back in my website, I go into the module settings, and you'll notice where in the advanced settings in the footer, I'm injecting this script. So that is the same script. And all this is the footer is going to add code after both of these buttons. So because this is JavaScript, I need to ensure that the buttons exist before we call them. So that is how we're able to make all this happen. So I'll just close that and then close edit mode. Now, right now, if we click this, there's nothing going to happen because I don't have the devices hooked up. But as you saw in the intro, when we click these buttons, then those pneumatic cylinders are going to fire. But that's exactly how simple it is. You just create some buttons, write your code inside of the IDE, flash it to the device, and then you are ready to rock.
If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking it out. And see, I told you that it was easy. If you're trying to follow along and you're getting stuck, feel free to reach out to me, submit an email on my website, or submit a form, or follow me at CBPSC on Twitter. And also, stay tuned, because as soon as Halloween gets here, I'm going to post a reactions video where we see the reactions of the trick-or-treaters as they walk by. So hopefully we'll have some good ones captured for you. Thanks for tuning in.